Good morning. Today's going to be a little different than a normal sermon. As I have the opportunity next couple months to get up here and preach a little bit for you guys, I figured I'd start off. First opportunity I had to get up, share my testimony a little bit, that you guys understand a little bit who I am, where I come from. So today we're going to talk a little bit about hats. I like hats. I don't always wear a hat, but I have a lot of them. And I have some that are just from different things that I've gathered, from different places I've been, different things I've done. I do have a cowboy hat. Most days I do wish I was a cowboy. But I have some from different jobs, and I've just collected different hats from different places I've been, different things I've done. Quite a few of them. I have one here from Ireland. Loved my time over there. But I do have one favorite hat. It's probably my newest hat. But I do love it, and this is my favorite hat, and we'll come back to that one later, if it stays. So I have a lot of those hats I wear, but besides just all these physical hats I have, through my life, I've figuratively have worn a lot of hats in my life, and some of those have come from just who I am and have to deal with my family. When I was born, I was a son. I was a brother with two sisters, and I was a nephew. Most recently, that I really enjoy is I'm an uncle. I spend a lot of time with my nephews. But other things have to do with the jobs I've had. Been anything from a carpenter, the waiter, mechanic, tire salesman, maintenance worker, pump truck driver, just a wide variety of things. And some of the hats I've worn in my life have to deal with different ministries that I've been a part of. I've been a youth leader, missionary. Here I've done Awana. I've been an Awana leader. I've done AV here and other places, and more recently I get the opportunity to preach to you guys. But all those different hats I've worn through my life, and they've kind of made me who I am. They've all shaped me a little bit in a different way. So we're going to take a look at my testimony. You'll probably see how some of these different hats that I've had to wear through my life have changed me a little bit. And so to start with, I grew up in a fabulous home. I was born into the two Christian parents who raised me in the church. And they loved on me, showed me Christ's love, and at a young age I accepted Christ. I couldn't tell you exactly when. I can tell you it was probably before like 7 or 8. That's the time I specifically remember someone presenting the gospel to me and being like, yeah, I believe that, and they made a big deal of it, and to me that's what I grew up with. That's what I knew. I've already accepted that. And so to me it wasn't a super huge deal that they were making it out of. But I grew up in the church. I knew all the Bible stories. I've been taught them in Sunday school and BBSs and everything else. And so besides being kind of an awkward and unpopular child, growing up with life was pretty good. I didn't have much issues. I was a good kid. I knew all the right answers all the time in Sunday school, and I behaved well both in Sunday school and at normal school. I was a good kid, and then came my teenage years. In other words, my rebellious years. I was still at church, at school, I was still the good kid. I was still the kid that I didn't do drugs, I didn't drink. I was still a good kid. I still had all the right answers. But my rebellion really had to do with my parents. And specifically my father. Me and my father you can tell I'm my father's son. I'm almost exactly like him. So that meant we butted heads more often than not. And so I really started to put a strain on my relationship with my dad. Didn't get along with him very much. Up until I was 18 and moved out of the house, I lived in the same house as my dad. I could go a week or two without talking to my dad. I mean, we just didn't get along, so I just didn't talk to him. He didn't talk to me. And so we didn't have that relationship. And part of that rebellion from my parents, specifically my dad, it helped lead me away from God too. To where I wasn't living my life for God. I still went to church every Sunday. I was in youth group, and I still had all the right answers all the time. But the answers I gave and the life or showing I was living really wasn't what I was living on the inside. But 2 Timothy 2:13 says that if we are faithless, he, referring to God, remains faithful. And I found that incredibly true in my life. Because while I wasn't living my life for Christ and I was willing just to go do my own thing, God wasn't going to let that happen. He refused to let me go. And so I went on through high school being, essentially, I was probably very much a poster child of what a Christian kid should look like. I went to church, I went to youth group, I was very involved in youth group. I was still that good kid, but I was very focused about myself. It was all about me, what I could do. I was really kind of living a double life between what other people saw and what I wanted and what I thought about for myself. So God could have let me walk away at that point. He refused to do that, and he started to push me back towards himself. One of those times was about my junior year of high school. We went on a youth conference out in Colorado. It was a couple-day conference, and I remember, I think it might have been second last night, we're sitting there during worship, and I was sitting there next to one of my friends, and he was just pouring his heart out to God. He was crying, weeping, feeling bad for the things he'd done in his past. He's laying his heart out there before God, and I just sat there next to him thinking, I'm missing this in my life. I don't have this. There's something missing there. And so that started me thinking that I needed to change something. But fun fact about me is I'm really good at procrastinating. Got me into a lot of trouble in college because I'd wait till the last minute to do anything. So same thing happened in my spiritual walk. I'd be like, I could fix this, but you know what? Next week's a good time to start. And then next week would come, you know what? Next month would be a good time to start fixing that. And it kind of just pushed it back and back to repeating next year, next month, next year I'll do something about it. So again, I knew I needed something, but I wasn't willing to start doing it to fix it. I could have. And so I wasn't doing anything to change it myself. But God wasn't going to let me get away that easily. He started putting some people in my life, really people who had been there, but really had them start pushing me towards him. First one of those was my youth leader, Becca. I had, for high school, my senior year in high school, I did an internship with my youth leader. I already had a great relationship with her. She'd been there for a few years. But then I just spent that year working with her in the youth group, and she kept pushing me towards Christ and kept encouraging me to grow in Christ and make choices that were Christ-centered and not centered on myself, and kept pushing me towards that. And then another person that did that was another youth leader. His name was Ron. He was give you a picture of him. He was a real big man, full beard. He was truly a man's man. Grew up in Pennsylvania. He came up to Alaska a few times to go hunting. He'd go to Colorado to go hunting. He was this man's man. But anyone who met Ron would know immediately that his life was lived for Christ. He just loved Christ with his whole heart, and he loved sharing that love with youth. And that's what he was all about. And every conversation I would have with Ron, he'd bring up Christ, and he'd point towards Christ, and he would encourage me to seek Christ. He challenged me. I read a lot in high school to where I was reading 2 or 3 books a week. That's what I did. And he encouraged me to try to, every time I read another book, to sit down and read a book of the Bible. And he just always pushed me towards Christ. And so those two people were always pushing me towards Christ, to live my life for Christ and not for myself. And so I started to think about, how did Christ want me to live my life? What can I do for Christ? instead of living for myself. And then there was one other person kind of experience that really showed me that I was doing things wrong, that I needed to change. And it was a huge shock for me because it's not where I thought it would come from. Growing up, my mom was the one who took us kids to church. She made us sure we were in church every week. She's the one who did devotionals with us. She's the one who really pushed us towards Christ and really shown us Christ's love. And she was in my family, she's kind of the one that I always imagined was the spiritual one, the religious one, the one who took us places for God. But we went camping as a family one weekend, close to my senior year in high school. And my family was staying in our motorhome, but being me, I decided to stay in a tent out behind the motorhome in the woods. And one morning I woke up early, something I only do when I'm camping. I decided to go out, start a fire, kind of sit by the fire. So I got up, went out, but my dad had already beaten me out there. And he was out there sitting by the fire with a Bible open on his lap, reading it. And it's something I don't think I know if I've ever seen my dad with a Bible outside of church before that. And it kind of shook me a little bit. I was kind of surprised. I actually didn't even know what to do. I went back to my tent because I didn't want to go interrupt him. But it was just something that I wasn't used to seeing my dad reading the Bible outside of church. And so it kind of made me go, why am I not reading my Bible? Why am I not having this personal relationship with Christ as well? And that pushed me towards trying to live my life for Christ. And so senior year of high school, I really decided not to live my life for myself, not to pursue the dreams and hopes and goals I had, but to follow what God wanted me to do. And so, what did God want me to do? I had no clue. And he started, with that internship with my youth director, kind of pushed me towards, well, maybe you want to be a youth pastor, do something with youth, some type of ministry. I was like, all right, but how do I go about doing that? I don't know how many of you know Steve Hostetter. He's the old president at Alaska Bible College. Becca, my youth leader, was his niece. And so she's like, well, I know a college up in Alaska. Alaska sounds good to me. And so I set my mind on coming up here to Alaska to go to college. But that didn't go over well with everyone. My mom didn't want me to go so far away. My dad, being a self-made man, thought college was kind of worthless. And others looked at me. I remember having one conversation with someone, told them what I was thinking about doing, and they looked at me and said, there's no money in that. Why would you do that? And, well, they didn't seem to understand that's what God was pushing me towards, but my mind was made up, and so I came to Alaska to go to college. And I can tell you that is probably the single best decision in my life outside of accepting Christ. Coming up to Alaska, not specifically Alaska, but to Bible college, was huge. My relationship with Christ began to grow so much. Being in Bible college, being in the Word, in classes, learning about God, gaining more knowledge on God and who He was and how we should live for Him. Just having conversations with other Christians on a regular basis about God. It was huge for me, and it made me grow a lot in my faith. But not all my growth came from specifically just schoolwork. Some of it came hard because life was still going on. One thing that happened to me in college was I got a girlfriend. And as I grew in that relationship with her and began to love her more, one thing that was impressed upon me was that as much as I loved her, a fallible human being, how much more then should I love God? And that really pushed me to try to love God more, to spend more time with God. As I wanted to spend more time with my girlfriend, I should also be wanting to spend more time with God. Again, relationship with God continued to grow. I made plans for the future. We had plans laid out way for the future. But God, which I tend to do, I like to plan. And then God likes to say, I have other plans. So eventually my girlfriend decided that I was no longer in her future plans. And that made me rely upon God very much so when I felt like I didn't have much left there. And so it was this girlfriend who I spent a lot of time with, spent most of my time with, all of a sudden wasn't there, and God was. And so he was there no matter what. So I continued to grow with him through that hurt in my life. It wasn't fun. It wasn't easy, but he used that experience to help grow me a lot. But before I said that God was faithful no matter what, and while I was much more faithful towards him in college than before, I wasn't always faithful. Sometimes I was a little faithless. But he continued to be there, and he really showed me his faithfulness through college. There were two big ways. One of those was through finances. I didn't have much money going through college, but I always had money when I needed to pay a bill. It always came one way or another. I had a job. Always had a job when I needed it. Even to as far as I'd have money show up randomly in my mailbox to pay for something that I was planning on having to pay out of pocket. And he just continued to bless me with finances. But then another time, another way that he showed me his faithfulness was through prayer. One time, in my junior year of college, I was looking at an internship for college, and I had my plan, because I like to plan things out. I was going to go work with the missionary pilot for the summer and do their internship. I was starting to get it lined out, sat down, talked with the guy I was going to go with, and really listened to his heart. And his heart was really to have people working with him who in the future planned to be a missionary. And I went, I have no plans ever to be a missionary, full-time missionary. That's not what I want to do with my life. I don't have plans to do that. So we decided that me spending the summer with him wasn't the best idea. So that left me with no plan for the summer. And so what I needed then was something else to do for the summer. So I needed a job. And then on top of that, I'm now almost the whole way through my junior year in college. I hadn't really been home for 3 years. I wanted to go home and see a lot of the friends I had back home. And so those were two prayer requests I had. I wanted a job and I wanted to go back home. And I shared those requests with some other people. But I had one more prayer request that I didn't really share with people. I kind of kept it to myself. Through college, I loved the idea of God being our Heavenly Father. And I just loved that image of God being our Father. But part of that made me realize how sucky my relationship was with my own father. I talked to him very briefly on like his birthday and Father's Day, and that was about it. And so I wanted a better relationship with my father. What it came down to. And so I had those three prayer requests. I needed a job, I wanted to go back home for a bit, and I wanted a better relationship with my father. And so I sat down, and all three of these things kind of happened at one time. I sat down, I was praying for him about a week. About a week and a half, I get a call. My phone rings. I look down at it. Before I answer it, it's my dad calling me. So I'm thinking, what is he calling me for? He never calls. Answer the phone. He asked me, or comes out and says, I hear you're looking for a job. I was like, yeah. He said, work's been busy. I could use extra help this summer. And so I was like, yeah, that would be great. So I hung up on the phone with him, closed my phone, and I kind of looked at it for a second. And I was just shook. I mean, I had a job for the summer back home in Pennsylvania with where all my friends were I wanted to see. And it was the start of repairing that relationship with my dad. In my mind, those 3 prayer requests I had were 3 completely separate things, not related at all. And then God just came and answered all 3 of them with 1 phone call. I couldn't do anything but know it was God working that, and praise him for it, because he is good and he's always faithful. And so that summer went well, went amazing. Closer now with my dad than I ever was before, and that summer started all that. But life along came up to my senior year of college. Really didn't have plans for after college. God did, though. And I still needed my internship for college. So after my senior year, I made plans to go work at Victory Bible Camp for the summer. And God had also been working me through that senior year of college on that whole missionary thing to where I could possibly consider doing that in the future. He definitely softened my heart towards it. But then I went and I spent the summer at Victory. I fell in love with the place, and probably about halfway through the summer, I knew that's where God wanted me as a full-time missionary. And there was no denying it. God wanted me there. And so I made plans to do that. But to be a missionary, you have to raise support. And I can tell you, I'm not good at raising support. And I had difficulty with it, and God taught me a very valuable lesson, because I'm not good at doing things on my own. Because I went in support raising, trying to raise support through my means and my way, how I wanted to do it. And he taught me that I can't do it on my own, that I need him and I need his power in order to do it. So through that, raising support, I finally got the support I needed. Came up to Victory. Spent a year there. It was a great, amazing year. I love camp ministry. I think it's huge in showing people Christ's love and reaching people who wouldn't normally have that. And I wanted to spend the rest of my life there. I mean, that was my plan. I had no reason to leave. But God went, that was fun. Let's move on. And I fought that. Fought that for a while because I loved Victory. I loved what they were doing there. And so I fought that for a little while until God finally worked on me to be able to put that behind me and no longer aim for that goal of being there. But then I got to the point, well, okay, if you don't want me to do that, Lord, what do you want me to do? So I didn't have any other plans at that point. He kept shutting them all down. And so he brought me back to Glen Allen. I was like, all right, I can go to Glen Allen. I like it there. I can find a job. But then he presented me with the opportunity to help out with the youth group. The whole reason I came to Alaska in the first place was to go to college to be a youth pastor. And so he put me in with the youth group to start working with it. I started with the junior high, and then the opportunity arose that the senior high needed a lot of help. I don't think for a second it's a coincidence that I ended up in Glen Allen just as the senior high youth group in Glen Allen needed more help leading it. And so I had that opportunity to step in that role and do what I had a passion for, working with youth. Something I kind of given up doing a couple years back and being a youth director or something like that, and all of a sudden now I'm back in it doing it again, which was kind of cool and amazing. But then God didn't stop there, and he continued to push me to grow. And so in college there were some things that I kind of didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a missionary, and he made me do that. I loved it. The other thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to preach. I don't do standing up in front of people and talking very well. But again, now God's presented me this opportunity to preach. Something that I've had in the past and I've done in the past some, but I've always done it with dread. But now God has me. I'm super excited for these coming months, the opportunity to get up here and preach. I'm excited, and it's definitely a change in focus than where I've been previous when I've gotten up and preached. So I'm really excited to see what God does and continues to do in my life. But so that's kind of where I'm at now. And so in the beginning, I talked about hats. I talked about a lot of things that I'd done, a lot of hats that made me who I am. But I didn't talk about one of the hats, and I hope you guys picked it up through it. Kind of like my favorite hat here that I have. It's kind of the most important hat I have wearing figuratively, and that's being a Christian, being a child and servant of God. 2 Timothy, I mentioned 2 Timothy 2:13 later, or 2:13 earlier, and just a few verses past that, you have 2 Timothy 2:15. And some of you may know this verse. If you do want it, it says, "Do your best to present yourself as one approved, a workman who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth." And approved workmen are not ashamed, is what AWANA stands for. And that's kind of my desire in life. To be someone God can use, to be a workman approved by God, who's not ashamed of what I'm doing, not ashamed to present God to people, not ashamed what other people might think of me as I present the truth, what God has to say to them. And so all these other hats I have make me up who I am, but this hat of being a workman for God, being a Christian, is my favorite, and it's one that I hope people see when they look at me, that they may notice all these other hats, but that's the one they notice is on top of everything else. That all these other hats pale in comparison to the one that I wear of being a Christian, living my life for Christ. I don't want it to be obvious to all my good friends to know I'm a Christian. I also want it to be obvious to strangers I meet for just a short interaction. I don't want it to be something that I have an interaction with someone and then they not know that I'm not a Christian, because that's who I am above everything else. The saying goes, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words, which is good that people see that, but what I have and what I know and feel and know about God, and it's not something that I don't want to use words about. I want to shout from every rooftop as well. Let people know who God is and how much His glory, what His glory is like, and that I serve an almighty God. In Matthew 5:14 through 16, and Mike sang, not you, but you sang the song, or the whole worship team sang, Mike picked it out, being a light to the world there for the offering. Fits right in with this. It says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on the hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand. And it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." And so that's what I want my life to be. When people see these other things that I've done, being a missionary, being a youth worker, being a carpenter, pump truck driver, mechanic, that they don't see those things that I've done, and that I don't take pride in those things, and they don't give me glory for those things, that they see how I've done those things for God, and let God use me in all those positions, and give glory to God for all of it. To where that hat I'm wearing of me being the Christian doesn't point towards myself, but points towards God and all that. And I know I fail at this a lot. I'm sure I have interactions with people that I don't know very well who would have no clue that I'm a Christian. And there's interactions I'm sure that I would be ashamed if people knew I was a Christian from those interactions, being that representation for Christ. I know I failed at that. But my goal is to be better. I want to be better at it. I want all my interactions to point towards Christ. And that's going to be kind of the challenge I want to leave you guys all with from this, from looking at my life and thinking about the hats that you wear personally and everything you do, to what do people see from you when they see you? Are they seeing all these other hats that you wear, or are they seeing that you're a Christian living your life for Christ? And so that's kind of just the challenge I want to leave you guys here today. If you guys close with me in prayer here. Lord, thank you for your day. I thank you for the beautiful weather. I thank you for everyone who is today. I just ask that you be with us as we go about our lives, Lord. Just living our lives for you, Lord. I just ask that our interactions with other people point to you so that we can give you the glory that you deserve. I just ask that you be with us, continue to guide and direct us in everything we do. In Christ's name, amen.